good afternoon. This is Mitchell Jones. Welcome to Mind Your Biz podcast. Today's episode, we're going to finish the idea of building credibility. The previous episode, we gave it a start. Today, we're going to talk about different companies in little snippets, if you will, of why they were successful, what difficulties we had, and try to build that credibility before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the marine industry and the business that I'm in today. So I'm going to take you back to 1988. And I was working for an airline at the time in the customer service side, was learning how to flying planes, and realized that the earn, pay taxes, spend mindset was not going to satisfy my desires to leave generational wealth. And I also realized that owning a business at the time, an S corporation or an LLC, or even a C corp at the time, you would earn, spend, and then pay taxes on what's left over. So I had to figure out how to do this. I've got an intuitive mindset about digging into how are successful business people successful if they've not come out of Harvard or Princeton or Stanford or some business school, which I did not. So I had to figure this out on my own. So I picked up a book, and it was written by a guy named Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon Hill was around and came into the world in 1883 and died in 1970. And what he did is he started taking the concept of working for some of the wealthiest people in the world at the time for free. John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford. And he basically followed them around. He was a shadow. And what he learned were principles on what made them successful. And he decided one day he was going to write a book. And he wrote the Think and Grow Rich book. And back in the late 80s, instead of reading the book, which I did, I had cassette tapes. And I'd stick them into the car and I'd listen to each of the different episodes that came with the book. And it turned me into, all right, I can go do this. I have to follow some principles. I've got to figure out all that I didn't know, a balance sheet, an income statement, hiring people, firing people, the balance with life, with small kids. And it was 88, 89, and 90 were very difficult times as I gave up a career and a paycheck to strike out on my own and take that risk and be uncomfortable taking that risk. So read the book, and there are 13 principles that he speaks about and writes about that I applied to what I was going to attempt to do in starting a business. So the first business I started was a commercial interiors company, and that was a spinoff of an entry into business by my sister-in-law at the time, who owned a business and needed some help. And I was able to take what I learned from her in '89 and form a company called Elements for Interiors. And we were going into commercial office space at in the Dayton, Cincinnati marketplace, and we were renovating. We were selling office furniture, and I was the CEO, and I had two partners, and it was the start of, all right, this is how this works. No idea what a balance sheet was, no idea what an income statement was, no idea what a cash flow analysis was about. We had to figure this out. And there were a lot of times in the early days of the 1991, and at that time we were going through the first Iraq War with President Bush, and the country came to a stop. But we were able to kind of get over that hump. And a couple of takeaways from that industry and that time is I learned a real key piece of making decisions. And that is, don't make a bad decision quickly. Step back, think, talk to your mastermind group, talk to people that are smarter than you, and determine what the best path forward is. But don't snap to a decision. always kind of step back from it and think. Find a quiet place in your car, in your media room in your house, or in your basement, or in your garage, but someplace where you can just stop and think, what are my outcomes? So if you take decision making from outcome back, you basically visualize what the outcome will be of that decision, and you tactically think through, what do I have to do to achieve outcome? So I can tell you that those were the best learning experiences. There were a lot of times that we had, at the time, 50, 60 employees, and we didn't have money in the bank to make payroll. And I kept asking our accounting team, why is that? And I said, I'm looking at this, we're making money. And they, in essence, said, they're receivables. We're waiting to collect on the money. And I thought that I can't be out of money. I still have checks left. So what are we going to do about that? So we had to grind our way in the early 90s into turning that white paper into green dollars and how quick we could turn cash. Most small businesses today run out of money because they don't, for a number of reasons, but one of them is that they don't plan their cash flow. And I had to learn that the hard way. I was 28, 29, 30 years of age, thought I had this business world figured out, but I kept running out of cash. But I would look at the P&L statement and it would say, we're making money. And then I'd come over to the cash flow statement and go, wow, there it is. It's sitting out there in 45, 60, 70, 80, 90-day receivables. You can't run a business that way. You have to collect your money quickly. And today, anyone that comes into your home to do work, whether it's plumbers or HVAC people or whomever it is, always get some money up front. And that's new. That's just happened in the last 20, 25 years. The previous 15 years of my business cycle, we didn't do that. We just waited on the money to come in, and people would call. I'd have to go pick up checks. But there were times that in the early 90s that we simply just ran out of cash, but we still had money. We still had white paper, receivables, invoices that hadn't been paid. So I learned a lot from that particular business and that industry. I enjoyed it. I was able to provide for my family, took a big risk, but I go all the way back to the book that I read by Napoleon Hill. And there are lots of different self-help books out there and people that make a lot of money speaking to audiences about how to do things. But if you fundamentally just go back to simple basics, Napoleon Hill wrote 13 principles. I'm going to tell you what they are. Desire. You need to have the burning desire to be successful. You need to have faith that you can actually achieve it. You think about auto-suggestion, and that is like on my wall, on my mirror in my bathroom, I have two words written a lot in basically lipstick: commitment and discipline. Now, I can be committed to something, put it on my calendar to go work out, cut the lawn, go to the grocery, whatever it may be. I'm committed. It's on my calendar. The question then is, do I have the discipline to actually do it? So people tell me all the time, I go do this and I go do that. And then I find out they didn't. Well, they said they were committed to doing it, but in essence, they didn't have the discipline to actually go do it. So auto-suggestion plays into that commitment and discipline mindset. Specialized knowledge. You've got to learn that whatever industry you're in, selling or accounting or operations, any of the pieces of the puzzle, you've got to have knowledge, specialized knowledge in each of those pieces. Imagination. You need to be imaginative. You have to think outside the box. You have to kind of look down through the future and figure out, what is it that I'm going to do, that I'm going to be committed to doing, and I'm going to have the discipline to do it. And in that comes specialized knowledge. And you've got to learn those industries that you're working in every day. And by focusing on it, you just get smarter and brighter about it. Organized planning. Write down my work. I do everything in notes. Even at this time of my life, I still have a book of notes sitting here on my leg. I don't do it on my phone. I don't do it on the desktop. I don't do it on a tablet. My organized planning is on a piece of paper where I can read it. When I'm looking at documents, I'll look at them on my desktop, but if I've got to comment on them or I've got to make suggestions or corrections, I'm going to print them out and I'm going to focus on them because the eye and the hand work much better than the eye and the keyboard. For me, decisions, how to be purposeful in decisions. Again, going back to never make a bad decision quickly. Think about it, step back from it. No matter if everything's on fire around you, you have to be calm, cool, collected, and sort out what the outcomes are of your decisions. You have to be persistent. There's an analogy out there that business guys go out to an island with all their staff and all their people, and they show up on this island all by themselves, and they turn around and they burn their boats. That's a prime example of being persistent. And each and everything that I've done in these businesses has been based on, I'm going to keep grinding at this. If I'm going climbing or I'm going to go fly a plane or rafting or scuba diving, you have to be persistent in your thought process and getting to the end. Mastermind principle is my favorite of all the principles. And the concept is that you are going to surround yourself, whether they're consultants, friends, family members, employees, or colleagues that are smarter than you in certain pieces of your business. If it's operations, accounting, marketing, whatever it may be, and then you're going to spend all of their time, you're going to be in their face as often as you can be to learn. And taking that mastermind principle applies not only in your business life, but in your family life. There are things that have come up with our kids and our wives and our husbands that you need some help, whether it's a friend, a family member, a pastor, whoever it is. Go seek out advice. No matter what, it's okay to ask advice or to ask questions. Subconscious mind. This one is in the back of your head. Bad things come into your head when your business is having difficulty or your family's having difficulty. You've got to redirect that negativity into some positive outcomes. You have to this one's hard. I've lived it. There have been many instances where I've had to go back and stop and say to myself, okay, this is going to be fine. Yes, I don't have any money in the bank. I can't make payroll. Yes, I want that project over there, but I don't have the security deposit. Yes, I want to do this, but I can't, you can't. You got to step back, put positivity in your head and in everything that you're thinking about, and and be positive in the way you project yourself. Anyone that's watching this podcast will say, the last thing I want to do in my walk in life is hang out with negative people. You just don't want to. You're the average, listen to my words. You are the average of the 5 people you associate with the most. Each and every listener here is that. You are the average person that you associate with the most. Those 5 people, whoever they are. So if you have negative people around you, it's going to disrupt the subconscious mind. So you've got to be positive. You've got to be around positive people, successful people, and that gets in the back of your head and stays there. And if you can use them in mastermind principle, it's even better. Asking them great questions. The last one I'm going to speak about is Sixth Sense. There's a couple of others. Read the book. Sixth Sense. So I like outcome-based thinking, and it's really a sixth sense. So when you walk into a room, in a conference room, and you're a salesperson, and you only have one way to kind of do things, you're not going to be successful. You're not. Ever. If you walk into a conference room to sell something, and the room's got 10 people in it, you've got to be a chameleon, changing colors, changing your posture, your dynamics, and you've got to read the room. And that comes from Sixth Sense. So that extra little bit of the 5 that you have is the 6th one. And when you walk into situations or you're looking at potential investments in businesses or you're trying to help your family, you've got to have a little bit of Sixth Sense, which will help you make your decisions. Those are the things that I learned in that business in the early 90s. And then in the late 94, 93, 94 timeframe, that business was starting to mature. And I sold it to a couple that was my partners. And that was on May 17th, 1995. The 2 or 3 months beforehand, I was watching an industry start to really become important, and that is video and audio and data conferencing. But as I've said in a previous podcast, the pipe or the dynamics of delivering that information across the globe, that infrastructure wasn't in place at the time. So there were a lot of companies that were building that infrastructure in the US and across the world. But what was happening is we're starting to see the idea of video and audio and data conferencing become popular in the business world, but at the small business level, it wasn't there. So we took a risk. So I took the money that I made in selling the Elements for Interiors company, and I reinvested. And it was a big risk. I had had some success with that business. I had a stable family at the time, and that was going to be risky. So 95 through 98, I grounded out. And what we did is we partnered with some of the world providers in compression technology. And these codecs was what the boxes were called. This was not software driven at the time. This was hardware driven. Would take what we're doing here and compress it into very small pipe, because that's what we had. We had copper lines at the time, not much fiber. That risk paid off greatly. It took a while, took 5 years, 6 years, which is at the time was a while. And I learned a lot from that business. I learned how to scale a business, not be a one office, one setup. I learned scale. I learned how difficult it is to hire people in remote locations, how to manage people from a remote location. I learned that no matter how much we advanced in the technological world in the Midwest, we were never going to keep up with what was going on the West Coast of the country or in Israel at the time and other places in the world that had a high-tech mindset. But I knew if we could be second to the bus stop with our applications and how we built this business and where we gained customers, I would be okay. Being second was okay to the bus stop. Sometimes being first to the bus stop with new technologies and leading edge technologies, you get hit by the bus. Here, that happened a lot. There were a lot of different companies that thought they could do something and be first to market, and they failed. I did not want to see that happen. So we took the approach, the strategic approach to build a platform that took audio, video, and data conferencing, and we took it to telemedicine, telehealth, to the educational system, to primarily private schools that could afford the technology, into conference rooms. And we built this business around, you don't have to fly. You can go face to face with people. Now remember, those of you that are watching this are probably thinking, well, we do that all the time now. But back then we did not. In the late 90s, we did not. And we had 11 offices across the U.S., 175 employees, a great engineering department, and we opened up an office in Brussels, in Belgium. And one of the key things that we did is we partnered with telecom companies and to see how they sold network and topology to your office buildings and retail buildings. And what we discovered is it was unregulated, and our company could become a CLEC, a competitive local exchange carrier. So we applied in all 50 states to sell dial tone, phone service, not the actual hardware, but the service. And as we built that, we built platforms that delivered telehealth, telemedicine, educational products and services into private schools around the country. Those are the schools that could afford them, colleges, universities, and more importantly, conference rooms, so that you could hold meetings, remote meetings all over the world that had this capability. And one of the things that I did is we found that the European market was interesting. So I developed a gentleman reached out to me and said, our CEO, that is the CEO of Talendis, a phone company in the EU, wanted to partner with us because our technology was so good. So I went to Belgium, signed a partnership agreement with Talendis, and that sent us quite a bit of European business onto our platform and onto our network. And we had one of the standard network operations centers in our headquarters that had all the blue lights and the HVAC and racks of technology. And it was monitored 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And we kept a 5.9 reliability. And that was the key back in the day, in the late 90s, is the reliability of this service that we were providing and the tech and software that we were providing had to be 99.999% reliable. So finding 5.9s in that world at that time was a challenge, but we overcame it. And then I was approached by one of the wealthiest men in the state of Ohio at the time to be a partner. Didn't really want to do it at the time, did it anyway. And we grew that business. And then on August 8th, 2000, we sold that company to a publicly traded company headquartered in Tel Aviv, Israel. I learned a lot. I learned I didn't know much. I didn't know how to scale, how to build the same thing over and over again and repeat it and repeat it. McDonald's does it. Burger King does it. You know, a lot of these fast food restaurants, a lot of these Home Depots and Lowe's, they all look the same. They're scalable. You know what you're going to get when you walk in. We had to build that business in the late 90s and scale it. And I learned the detail in the balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow as we were spending more than we were making, but we had enough investment capital to continue to grow it. And the Israelis had great technology, compression technology, super good. We had sales, operation, and network topology in the US. So we sold that company and married those two, and it was a great success for a couple of years. At the same time, Y2K was coming into play, and everyone thought in the late 90s, the world's coming to an end. ATMs are going to spit out cash when you walk by. Airplanes are going to fall out of the sky. The chips in the world are not going to be able to handle the flipping over to 2000 from 1999. And come to find out, it ran the stock market up in the NASDAQ world. And then in March of 2000, after nothing happened, it crashed. So we were right in the middle of that transaction, in the middle of our transaction when Y2K kind of stopped. So that was a great business. I learned a tremendous amount, and I'm going to speak more about some of those specificities later down the road in other episodes. One thing that I did, all along the 90s, we had a boat and different boats. And there was a marina that needed to do some renovations, and I lent them some money. But after I'd completed my own due diligence in what their balance sheet income statements looked like. And I realized that like our CLEC operation, where every time you picked up that phone, I made money, every time that you stored your boat every day and every month and every year, that marina business was making money. It's that repetitive, predictable, dependable revenue. So the next evolution that I had was going from high tech, low touch to high touch, low tech. I needed to get out of the technology world. From 1995 to 2002, it was a grind. It will age you. Again, we were in the Midwest and we were competing with entities and enterprises that were Silicon Valley, Raleigh, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, that had a lot of talent that we had to go find, and we found it, and we were good at it, but we were not great at it. So it was time to sell that business to a company that was great at it, and that was our Israeli Israeli company. So we buy a marina, December 22nd, 2002, and I'm going to speak a lot about this industry, the boating, from manufacturing to storage to hospitality in the next episode. But we bought our first marina, and then through the late 2002 to 2010, we had boat retailers. We sold boats. We sold yachts. We had food and beverage and restaurant operations. We had a boat club that was a really fun investment. And we also got into the lodging side of the marina world. So we would buy a marina, and if they had a lodge or a hotel, we just buy that as well. So imagine being in the boating world and having to learn ADR and RevPAR, average daily rate and revenue per available room. No idea what those were. Absolutely none. But what had happened is through the great financial crisis, some of these businesses were over-leveraged, had difficulty, and because we were grinding our way through it, anytime there was a default situation that came up in the banking, some of the banking relationships that we had, they would call me and say, we've got a marina or we've got a hotel or a lodge property or a resort property we want you to take a look at. So in August of 2010, my wife and I had, at the time, 3 marinas, and a bank called me and said, we've got a hotel, a lodge, condos, a marina, and a food and beverage operation that's in default. And we want you to come take a look at it. That was on June 19th, 2010. July 22nd, 2010, I got in the car, drove to North Georgia, and found a beautiful piece of property, great little marina set up, 130 key lodge, another 60 keys and condo complex, and 3 restaurants. And the bank wanted us, the president of the bank showed up, said, I want to show you around this place. We're going to help you out. We'll lend you some money, and we want you to grind this out, turn this into a profitable enterprise. I had absolutely no idea how to run a hotel or a lodge. None, zero, this much. But what I did know is apply the principles of the mastermind group. Go find people that understand lodging, food and beverage, and hoteling, or hoteliering, I guess is the word, and grind them out. So I went through a process of elimination and finally found a couple of people that I could trust that understood that business, that could ask a lot of questions. I had trailing revenue and expenses for the property, but what I noticed is that the mindset of the employee base was pretty bad. There were a lot of negative people, and rightfully so. They had just gone through a default process, and the owners were sent packing, and I came in. So the first thing we needed to do was transition this the employees and the team and staff into a positive mental attitude. And that wasn't going to be easy. But we were successful. In about a 6-month window in late 2010, most everyone there felt like, hey, we're actually going to make this work. So my takeaway from that spot, that piece of business was, although it was in default and although it was absolutely beautiful and in really good condition, the workforce that was there had gone through a lot. And the great financial crisis had really kind of crushed and made them scared, made them fearful. People were losing their jobs. People were losing their homes. People were losing their cars and boats and no travel. It was difficult on them. It was difficult on me and my wife. But I knew for this business, because it was a high-touch business, it was going to touch customers every day. We needed to turn this one around. And it was going to start not with facilities, property, and plants. It was going to start with people. So I got everybody together frequently and often and asked them, what can we do better? What are your issues? What are your challenges? And I learned probably one of my best takeaways in life was, don't hire based on just the skill set in that particular industry. First, hire based on if the individual is a good person. Are they a good parent, mom or dad? Are they good? Are they good husbands and wives? Are they solid individuals? And lastly, measure aptitude. Can they adjust to this type of business? Can they, where they may be coming from, can we help them be better here? Can we help them be better people here? And that time of my life and in that business, that was my biggest takeaway. I learned that let's hire people that are good people first. And then we can teach them how to clean a room or gas a boat or serve a burger or work the counter at the reception station in the lodge. We could teach them these things. And we brought in people to teach them. But we hired first based on the individual, not their aptitude in that particular industry. That's my biggest takeaway from that period of time in the late 2000s and into the teens of 2000. A little funny story. We had 104, like in the winter months, this property got really slow. And back in 2012, we hosted, a couple things happened. We hosted a movie called Trouble with the Curve and all of the crew and all the staff. So they took all of our rooms, all of our condo units, all of our food and beverage, and they filmed for 3 weeks in North Georgia. And it was Clint Eastwood, Justin Timberlake, Amy Adams, John Goodman, and they were with us for 3 weeks. And I was there most of the time as kind of the security detail, and we had a lot of fun with it and all that sort of thing. But a really funny story, just a quick snippet here. About 5:30 one morning, my phone rang. I was in a condo on the property, and it was our food and beverage director who said, Mr. Jones, we are out of beer. I said, well, we just had a truckload of beer. No, you don't understand. We are literally out of every beer that we have on the property. I said, well, when do we have a delivery? He says, we got a truck that's bringing some items today. So I said, all right, what time do they usually show up? 7, 8 o'clock in the morning for the delivery. I said, all right, great. I'll meet you there. I'll be out there. So I went out there, one of those little trucks with a trailer, a semi-trailer with sliding doors on the side. And I told the driver, you're not going anywhere. Drop the truck. And he said, no, I got multiple deliveries. I said, no, I don't care what you're doing. Drop the truck. We want all the beer that you have. After he called his boss and after he raised all kinds of cane with us, we finally got him to unload the entire truck to fill all of our beer cases because this crew, this 300 people in the cast and crew, were on the property all the time and they were drinking us right out of all of our beer. That was one of the funnier stories. We had a lot of fun with that cast, and it was a very profitable 3 weeks. Another funny story in that industry, I didn't know a lot about Groupon. And our sales director said, hey, well, let's run a Groupon. Everybody else is in the lodging industry. And I said, all right, when do you want to run it? Let's run it in February in 2013. Let's run it in February. And we'll sell rooms March, April, and May, which are kind of the slower times, and then it ramps up as the weather gets better and spring comes. And she said, we're going to put a couple of bottles of wine, a couple of nights in a room, a food and beverage coupon. We're going to sell it for $189. $189. Well, that's awful cheap. Plus, Groupon's going to get 40% of it, or 30%, and we're going to net out $130, $40 a night. Okay, so let's not sell very many of them. Let's sell a couple of hundred. So I was at the Miami Boat Show, and I get this call, and I let it go to voicemail. I get it again and over again, and it's our sales director, Haley Birch, and Haley said, Mr. Jones, we got a real problem here. I said, what's that? She said, we sold 1,360 in the first hour. So we sold out the hotel for 3 months, the lodge, for $189 a night. That cost us probably $190 to do it. So we learned some fascinating things back in that particular time, and we applied what we learned and didn't make the same mistake twice. So then through the last part of this, where it really gets into why these podcasts, why I'm doing these, is in the marine industry. And I'm going to speak about marinas from 2014 through today and what has transpired in this industry, both on the manufacturing side, resort side, retail side, boat club side. I've got a number of applications in those pieces of the puzzle. So For the next episode, I want to thank you for watching. I want you to find us out there on Spotify and Apple. Make sure you follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave a review. I'm not very good at this, so I'm learning, but I'm going to do better each and every time, and I want to thank you for watching.